Hello, my friends. Welcome to the latest edition of Here's What We Know, the podcast of unexpected conversations. As always, thank you to our sponsors who help make all of this possible. And it's one of those repeat guests. You know why I invite people back is because during the first episode, I can't ask all the questions that I want to ask. And I told this guy, I've got to get you to come back because there's so much he's done. He's the executive producer of Exhibition Hub. He has contributed all sorts of skills like his production, virtual art, set design for more than 25 years. He has had, let's see, let me see if I get this right. Contributed to creating and overseeing multiple immersive experiential environments, including Titanic, the artifact exhibition, Jurassic World, the exhibition, Bodies, the exhibition, and Star Trek, the exhibition, and also Claude Monet. We talked to him last night about Van Gogh. It's John Zaller. John, how are you?
Good, Gary. Thanks for having me back. Yeah, that's a couple. I mean, there's been a lot of, I like to make things, so I really enjoy it.
You know, when somebody gives me an intro, it doesn't take that long. I'm just,
Well, somebody else wrote it. So,
is it?
If I wrote your intro, it would be long. You'd have a nice long
You
intro.
just have to talk very slowly, John. So
That's part of the
can I ask, because I know each one is a child. I know, right? And you don't pick a favorite child. But what brings you the most memories when it comes to thinking about that? Titanic, Star Trek, the bodies, I remember, because that was actual human bodies, right? That had been flayed open, for lack of a better word, and then and had the polymer all over it, so you could actually see it. Which one of those stands out to you as far as the most memories, maybe the most difficult or easiest to put together?
Okay. So, I mean, there's great stories with all of them. Probably the one that for me defines an immersive experience the most is something I worked on called Dialogue in the Dark. And that was an experience that you were in a pitch black room, a series of pitch black rooms. You were led through, you had a cane, and you were led through by this guide, disembodied voice, small groups. You went to a natural environment. You went to a kind of a commerce grocery store type of setting. You went on a mode of transportation. The best one was when you went on a boat, and then you ended up in a public place where, essentially you'd have a drink with your guide. It was about an hour-long experience, all in the total darkness. You're discovering by feel the whole way that you go through. There's an incredible soundscape all around you. And at the end, you realize that you learn that your guide is visually impaired or blind.
Wow.
So what happens is there's this incredible switch in terms of the definition of ability and disability. And there's an incredible empathy for a visually impaired and blind person. But there's also a great empowering of those folks who are those guides. And it creates a whole different perspective for guests going through the experience. There's an incredible transformation that happens not only in the creation of that experience and the building out of the team, because you get these visually impaired or legally blind or fully blind people who've never really had the opportunity to work that much in their lives, especially in this kind of setting. And I did this 15 years ago, so it's changed a lot since. But so there's a sudden empowerment there amongst them as staff. But then there's the experience of the guest, which is literally transformative. And then when you go to design something like that, when you design something, you have these big vistas and these graphics and these colors. Here it's a black room that literally is going to be designed entirely by what you're feeling as you go along. So every single square inch of that space has to be designed with a much higher attention to detail than even an exhibit that sighted people go to all the time. So it's a very special exhibition. It was very much of a artistic achievement. We had a great time doing it. And and for me, the reason it kind of defines immersive experience is that, talk about being immersed. You're completely surrounded in blackness. There's nothing else. And that for me always stuck out as it's about the story that you carry in you and the story that you tell. And that's something that's kind of guided me throughout the rest of my experiences that I've created.
That makes total sense because that truly changes a perspective, right? I mean, I love Star Trek, but you're not going to change much of my perspective, you know?
Right.
And I love the beauty of Van Gogh, but it's not going to change the way I think of the world. Wow, that would.
Yeah. Pretty cool. I mean, that's a it still operates in some cities in Europe. So if anybody gets a chance to go, especially to Hamburg, to go see it, experience it, I would highly recommend.
I've actually seen the Titanic thing. I saw that years ago. And
So Titanic, Titanic is a evergreen subject. It's the one that one of the biggest ones I did is in Las Vegas at the Luxor. But I but there's some new there might be some new Titanic stuff coming out the next couple of years that might be um, that will be a lot more immersive than even that.
wow, that's cool. Especially with technology today, I guess you could start to understand the feeling of panic. You could start to understand the ship listing, and the sounds that would have been happening. I mean, and again, this is just me off the top of the head. This is why I'm not a member of your team because I'm not that creative. But you can see or hear or even smell what that would have been like, and they've tried to recapture the movies and stuff. And I guess that's the future of movies. I mean, I see it 20 or 30 years from now, you'll go and you'll put on a headset and then you'll actually be in the set, right? You'll be in the scene. They'll have to find a new way of, so if you want to look over it there, then you can look, there may be the main actors, but if you wanted to
Yeah,
look, I mean, it's fascinating to think of
yeah,
the
yeah.
immersiveness that is to come.
Well, and whenever I think about creating these experiences, I've always thought about them as a sort of a 3D walkthrough novel, 3D walkthrough story that we created on paper first, and then it comes to life in this big dimensional structure, and then you're wandering through it. And I work with a lot of different design teams, and I work with a bunch of people who do theater, and theater really has um, an incredible amount to teach all of us in terms of storytelling because you've got this frame. It's live. You typically don't have a big budget. And even if you do, you can't do a lot of those crazy effects. So you have to use really clever techniques. And so it's great to work with theater designers and theater technicians, but what always blows their mind is, okay, so I built a theater set, but now the public's going to walk through it. Or I built a movie set, but now the public's going to walk through it. You mean they can look around that corner there and they can see what's behind that. And that's what really makes it the immersive experience different too. Is again, every surface is a surface that you're engaging with. And that's the idea, is that we create this surprise and delight around every corner, like we're doing with Claude Monet in New Orleans and Washington, D.C. and in Cincinnati.
I loved it because when I knew you were and I were going to talk about Claude Monet, I started doing my own little research and I had heard of Claude Monet. And I can tell you right off the top of my head, when I think Claude Monet, I think water, right? Because the
Yep.
way he gets the shimmer, that was always what, and I had a friend of mine who was an artist who had pointed that out to me. He goes, his ability to capture shimmer, the shimmer of the moon, the light, whatever, and the light source on that, he goes, is otherworldly. He goes, in his opinion, nobody's ever been able to recapture that. That they've never been able to capture that depth of feeling. And he goes, to me, that was what it was. It was a depth of feeling looking at water. And as we sat there and stared at it, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then as I studied more into it, I mean, talk about living an interesting life. Van Gogh was, as you and I have talked about the last time, it was more of a kind of a tortured life, and there were moments of happiness and life. But Monet it had tragedy,
Well, we
but it was
know.
interesting.
Yeah, he did enjoy his life. He really did. I mean, He earned it. I mean, he really earned it. He struggled a lot, but he really did. He got to the point where he really could enjoy life there at Giverny. Had some success as an artist too. Was Had a great relationship with the Prime Minister of France, Clemenceau, and it was just revered across the countryside. He lived to be 86, so that's also a great tribute. Plus the incredible body of work that comes with being a dedicated artist for that amount of time.
Is it?
The light, I think, sometimes sometimes when I'm in California, Southern California, uh, you know, I I think, man, I wish I could paint like Monet so I could capture the way the light is so saturated in that particulate of the desert and the ocean coming together. And that's really what he was able to do in that plein air mode of painting that he learned was he was able to show us, he's able to capture light in a special way. And that was what so much of his work was about, was watching the light change on an object over time. So for example, his cathedral series at Rouen, um, it's a series of paintings. You're familiar with that facade of the
Mhm.
cathedral. It's an amber color. It's a blue color. It's a periwinkle. It's a mauve. It's a violet. It's almost like a Warhol series of prints, screen prints of seeing something the same thing in a different way. But he was doing it in order to get the expression of that beautiful structure by all the different modes of light that were hitting it throughout the day and into the evening. And that was just something that he was passionate about, partly in part because one of his big goals was, a photograph can show you what something looks like. Photography had just been invented around the time that he was born. People said painting was dead, but a photograph can't let you know how it
Mhm.
feels, but a painting can. So that was, it was important for him as an artist, dedicated to the craft, to keep painting alive, um, by showing us this different way that painting can work, even in a world that's starting to get dominated by still images and moving images from cameras.
Listen at you class this joint up. I mean, I'm not used to having kind of conversations like this, but is it just off the topic for just a second? Is it rare for painters, especially say before uh, 1950? I'm just picking a number out of the air, John, to experience success, to actually be there and feel the success and see the financial rewards and see all of the things that maybe they hope for as far as just the appreciation and the financial rewards? Is it rare in your experience?
Well, I think it's rare for artists from any era to see success when you think about the number of people that are doing creative work and the number of people that are recognized. Uh, we, of course, have celebrated artists from the Renaissance, you know, Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Botticelli, Raphael. They were recognized for their brilliance and their talent, and they had patrons, and um, Da Vinci's success actually came more from his work as an inventor, def- working for the defense industry, basically, of Florence in order to allow himself to buy those expensive pigments. Michelangelo's work was much more um, recognized, to create tributes um, to God and to Jesus and to and to his benefactors. So we definitely have, era by era, we have successful artists. Um, so, but it's always great to see a talented artist get some success in their life, because it is so often the case that we we get more interested in an artist after they're gone, because we start to reflect on that body of work. Um, and that's tragic. I mean, it is tragic when you have talented artists who struggle their whole lives because they're so dedicated to their craft, that don't really get that recognition. So it's a nice part of the Monet story that he did start to get that success. even though he struggled when he was younger, even to the point of trying to end his life because his financial struggles were so great. Shortly around the time of his the birth of his first child.
He uh he did leave an interesting life. And here's what I take, and I know you know this is why I get to bounce off from yesterday. He was he was not a nice man. He was from the, as far as I can tell, the Michelangelo mode. Right? It's like I'm focused on what I do and what I want,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
maybe to the greatness of artistry, maybe there has to be a sense of selfishness that has to permeate, right? Because I mean, you have to explore your vision. And maybe that's why they get there. But he was prickly, as we could say, right?
yeah. He did not like to be disturbed when he was working. He was single minded in his focus. Um, he had an agenda that he wanted to achieve, and you certainly see that with a lot of talented people out there. A lot of people that move the world forward. It's hard to move the world. It's hard to move the herd forward. For especially for that type of individual with that kind of talent, it's more about what can I do to get to show my worth, to get my recognition out there, to be recognized for what I see and what I'm good at.
Hmm.
The other thing too with him, um, he uh, he had some real trouble with his eyesight, which probably contributed to his irritability. um, he had trouble seeing his whole life, and then as he got older, he developed cataracts that shifted his entire hue to these deep violet colors. So a lot of his paintings in his 70s, the 60s and 70s, are rich and rich with violets because that's the light he was seeing. And then at the tender age of 72, he had a experimental cataract surgery and had one cataract removed from his eye. So this is in the early 1900s. And essentially what they did at that time was they removed the entire lens from one of his eyes. So that of course removes the cataract, but also that lens or that part of the lens filters out UV light. So now this painter who his whole life is spent dedicated to color, he can suddenly see uh, ultraviolet colors that none of us can see. We can't see as humans through the way our eyes are set up. So what a gift to him in a way. Although how did he translate that onto a canvas? We don't really know because we still can't see it.
That's the irony. I mean, where with the artist who can't see, Beethoven and can't hear, right?
Right.
And it's bizarre. Stephen Hawking with the freest mind in the world, but a body that's locked. It's
Juxtapositions. Yeah.
yeah, it's just got to be crazy on that. And we're talking about his life. We're talking about Monet, Claude Monet, and kind of started with Camille, right? And he met
Yep.
Camille as she was somebody else's model. And you want to explain that?
Well, so she was a model that was available through for life studies, and he certainly hit it off with her. And they had quite the romance, even having a child together. And then unfortunately, they were together for a while, but she did pass away at an early age, which was quite tragic for him. And he recorded in a beautiful painting of her on her deathbed.
It's heartbreaking. I looked it
Yeah.
up so I can see it, and it is if you could put pain on in paint, it's pain and pain. Because by all accounts, he loved her, was smitten with her to the point where his second wife became so jealous of her, and we'll get to that story. But I mean,
Yeah.
she wouldn't allow her name to be said or anything, right?
No, yeah, and that Alice was interesting because she was the wife of a patron. So they'd go over to the view the paintings, and her husband would be writing the checks, and Claude was
Cash in the
checking out
checks.
Alice.
if
Yeah,
you will.
exactly. It was right.
It was just so weird because she had a huge family because he had two. Didn't he have two kids with Camille? Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
and so and then she had six or four. I mean, it just turned into this huge family that all of a sudden he
Yeah,
goes from it's just me and the boys to my gosh, look at this brood.
yeah, and, I think that also that, lent itself to that, um, enjoyment of community that he developed later in life at Giverny. But, a lot of it was about that Giverny, being a place of refuge for him, but it was also, a place where people could gather. And artists from all over Europe would meet him there and spend time with him there. He was able to have a studio there uh, and finish off his paintings from his travels around Europe. And but as his family grew, that sense of community also expanded, and it made Giverny such an important place. And that's also part of the reason why we recreate parts of it in the immersive experience. So, getting to the immersive experience idea of being more than just projections on a wall, which we have this incredible 35-minute immersive experience, but we also take you to the garden at Giverny, and we take you into Monet's atelier at Giverny, where you can literally walk in his footsteps and feel what he felt to a certain degree. Smell the good cooking coming out of the kitchen, and he he actually planted the he said, "I'm good at two things in life: gardening and painting." And so obviously his water lilies and all of his gardens and his floral paintings that he painted throughout his life. But he also planted a lot of vegetables and aromatics that were served fresh to the table at Giverny by the cooks with whatever was in season at these big feasts that he would have.
That would be a fun thing to go to a Claude Monet dinner party.
That would be, yeah. And there's some paintings. There's some great paintings of food. The first food painting he did was a big side of beef.
How
And
random
then
is that?
it was almost like you walk by the butcher shop and he just, painted a big side of beef. And it was really in a way an homage to the peasants, because, they would get these huge sides of beef and then take them home and break them down and salt them and preserve them so that they could have them for a whole season. So that's really where that came from. And but then he also had some great paintings of pies and squashes and tarts, and then his picnics the picnics that he's painted over the years. So it was this great juxtaposition of raw beef versus this whole uh, courtesan style picnic in a beautiful Parisian garden.
I am so enamored of the creative process. Whether he can look at a side of beef. I've been in music for my life, and I admire songwriters and arrangers where and to talk to a songwriter, they'll tell you, oh, well, this came from this, or this guy said this, or I read this on a sign and the story came into my head. And
Yeah.
same thing, my buddy's a very good photographer, and we're sitting under a tree one day and he took a picture of this tree and he shows me the picture and I'm like, I'm looking at the tree and it doesn't look nearly as good as what's in that camera. How did you see that? And that's what fascinates me, as we've talked about Van Gogh, and
It's a
the
gift.
stories.
It's definitely a
Yeah,
gift.
to be able to see stuff that I don't think, and when you brought up the eyesight and the ultraviolet and things, having them see things that I am certain the majority of people walking on this planet don't see in the same way.
Well, and again, that's, going back to artists that we celebrate. That's why we love artists so much, is that they show us another way of seeing. They show us another way of being. They give us another avenue of thought. It's these new gifts. And I think that it's a drive they have, but there's also something that there's a spark, inspiration within them that harbors on the divine, in terms of just where does it come from? they're born with it. It's lighted in them, but it's why we celebrate the artists to such a degree. I mean, art is this. I was just talking to Amy, who actually set up our
Hmm.
meeting here, about art being this artist providing art and artists providing a refuge for us in today's world and in every era previously. And that's what makes people flock to these immersive experiences, is that they have a chance to get away from the craziness in the world, to be completely surrounded in this theme and this beauty, the beauty of the art, especially Claude Monet, who's just, his work was so serene and so rich in terms of color, um, and give you a chance to just reflect and just be. And it's as important as everything. It's as important. It gives us in a lot of ways a reason for everything else we do. So it's very, it is, think about how much music we listen to every
Uh-huh.
day. Think about how a certain song sets your mood in the right direction, or helps you recover from a mood. In the same way with admiring art, or, you know, if you listen to classical music, um, it's, yeah, it's super technical and super accomplished. But what happens at the end of it is it's a beautiful symphony that washes over you, that, carries you to another place. And in the same way, looking at one of Monet's big pastoral landscapes, or his huge water lilies installation at the Orangerie, it does the same thing. It takes you to another place. And again, it's that connection to something bigger than we are on our
I
own.
think that's an apt comparison because when you think about, I played in a symphony and orchestra for a while. I was, my kids love it because they're going to hold it. That'll bring up the fact he was an all-state French horn player 4 years in a row. Somehow he'll find a way to
I
work
love
that
the
into
love the
conversation,
French horn.
right? So I'm like, okay, guys, I just
Th-
did. So
There you go.
yeah, I
It's
got it. I got it in within 30 minutes of the conversation.
gonna bust it out.
Yeah,
You gotta bust it out here before we wrap up
exactly
today.
right. I had to get it in. But the thing about orchestral music is all the parts. It's one thing to write a guitar strum and then sing a song. It's
Yeah.
another thing of all the parts that have to come in all the right times and all the right places at the right level and the right, one thing needs to be soft, the other thing needs to be hard, a little, or just the way the notes come out. And that would be a painting, we've talked about Da Vinci. I mean, the Mona Lisa is amazing, but if you look what's going on around her is where everything goes crazy. And even on the water
Exactly.
lilies and stuff, your eyes are drawn to the water lilies. But if you take the time to look around, it's like woof. And then he'll turn it around like on Camille on her deathbed. There's nothing but a brief outline of her face. There's
Yeah.
nothing going on.
That's all that was necessary. So knowing exactly what tools what to show and what not to show.
It's crazy.
But and I think that the symphony is a great reference to the immersive experience overall too, because what we're able to do in that immersive gallery is highlight these other elements of the paintings, bring them to life in a way that you wouldn't necessarily see if you were looking at the canvas in and of itself. The fireflies come to life, the water lilies move, the koi fish are swimming through the scene. And that's something that's really special for people as well. The trains at the Gare Saint Lazare are coming straight at you, right through the screen. So it makes it really special in terms of giving the artist's work another level of understanding with the technology we have today.
Well, I look forward to Monet. I've done Van Gogh and I've done Titanic. I give everyone this same thing. Give yourself the afternoon. Give yourself the day. Don't tell yourself, oh, we're going to get through here in 90 minutes or an hour. Don't do that to yourself. It doesn't matter to them. The experience, you walk in, you use it at your own pace, but you're going to want that time for you. You're going to want
Yeah.
that time to go, I'd like a few minutes right here. Or maybe I'd like 20 minutes or one of those, I've been here 5 minutes. No, you've been there 41 minutes, just looking at one painting. which is the one thing that I think art has a thing of doing. Art, when I say timeless, I mean you lose your track of time with a good piece of art because a song has beginning and
Yeah.
end, right? But when you see a piece of art that connects with you, then there's no time
Timeless.
limit.
Timeless. Yep.
Yeah,
It's
it's
timeless.
just crazy.
And I so the one of the co-founders of Exhibition Hub, um, who sadly passed away, had this really he had this, and he's really the guy behind the bringing immersive experiences to the United States. But he had this really special way of being in a space that I was lucky enough to experience a few times. He would just go someplace and he would, set his suitcase, his briefcase down or his backpack down. He would just stand there. He would just stand there way longer than you would think anybody should stand any place. I mean, if it was 3 minutes, it could have been 3 hours. I mean, just always way more time than you needed to spend on a street corner or entering one of our venues or even pauses between in conversation. And he would just let all of that kind of wash over him and he would absorb it all, but it also being there with them and the people that were there with him, it gave them that space, like you said, to take more time. And it really is that simple of stopping what you're doing, looking around and taking it in. And that's again, that's what makes these artists so special is they give us that ability. But we can learn from them too, in the sense that we have that same uh, opportunity. We have to give ourselves, as you said, Gary, give ourselves that time.
Probably don't have the affair with your benefactor's wife, but that's just me talking. That could be a lesson.
I mean, it makes for a good story, but
Take a quick break. I'm coming back more with John Zaller, and we're talking more Monet and some other stuff right after this. I want to tell you why I am all in on Bison Junk. First and foremost, they are a full-service, eco-friendly junk removal company, but with this difference. They focus on recycling and donating usable goods. Their customer service sets them apart, and they pride themselves on their integrity. They'll show up when they say they will, and they'll do what they promise. If you have hard-to-remove items like hot tubs or large furniture, they figure it out so you don't have to. They want to be who you always come back to when it's time to declutter and organize your home or business. They're worth every penny at bisonjunk.com. So again, I find the life fascinating. Camille died. His son, John, I believe, died at an early age, both from disease. So he had that
yes,
pain. Everything I've seen about Alice, as we were talking earlier, she was immensely jealous of Camille. And to me, and again, because I was just reading a little bit on this the other night, uh, she was almost as ornery as he was. They didn't seem like they were pleasant people to be around. Or did I read wrong into that?
no, I think that's a decent assessment of their how the outside world perceived them. They were focused on building up a life there at Giverny, of raising a family, of making the ends meet, of finding success. And sure, you've got to again, you've got a choice to worry about what people are thinking about you, or to go ahead and get to your goals. And I could see that interpretation being held there.
Yeah. And really, we don't want society to be, I'm not going to care about anything. Because we can sit back and read all the platitudes and stuff of be yourself and be your own truth and all this stuff. No, society needs us all to go, hey, are you okay? Am I okay? Am I okay with you? Are you okay with me? And it's the Monets of the world who can stick out. And you need to be fantastically talented. If you're
Yeah.
if you're working at the sandwich shop, probably not a lot of people are going to put up with that
You
attitude.
might, I mean, but you might make a great sandwich.
You might make a great
I mean,
sandwich, but
I do think it applies. I mean, I do think that personality type apply. I mean, you see it every place. I mean, you do see it every place. They don't, those folks aren't, again, they're not necessarily always appreciated because they've got a singular way of doing stuff. But if you're committed to your craft, you're going to make the best sandwich out there, So, but it doesn't really show up the way it does on a massive canvas, in the same way that it does, between two pieces of bread.
Well, see, I think when you get so much praise, especially for artistry, right? That, and I've had this conversation before with people. You see it in music, you see it in acting a lot, that it is such a competitive field that for you to get in it and get recognized and then to make lots of money, because we've all heard that the vast majority of SAG-AFTRA people are below starving wages, right?
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
when all of a sudden everybody's telling you how great you are and how much money you're making and all of this stuff, you start seeing the attitudes get up because I think subconsciously you start believing, well, I am special. I have been blessed by God. The universe's hand is on me. So any whim I have should be obeyed. And that's the edge that you have to walk on with artistry. At least at least my observation, as limited as it can be from just looking at pop
Well,
culture.
yeah. I mean, I think also if you think about people who dare to not follow the more standard path, like Monet, for example, his father wanted him to be a businessman. His father said, "This art thing isn't going anywhere. Just go into business, build a nice life for yourself. Marry a nice woman, and have a nice life. You could do that with because they were middle class bourgeois. Um, so it takes a certain personality to say, I'm going to go do this. And as part of that personality, there's a certain level of confidence that comes with that. So sometimes it's more about the confidence that's there is what gets you going in that direction. I think it's when if that confidence gets overfed, where you start believing too much, that's where you get into trouble. Uh, Jay Z said,
You got 99 problems. Is that what he said?
you got to treat each project like it's your first
Yeah.
project. Every project you take on, it's your first project. You don't ever come and say, "Oh, I got this." There, but you also can't. You just have to try to remain humble. Is the hardest part, I think, for a successful artist. And but that really the way you do that is by staying in the work, because the work is what you improve upon, but it's also what shows you what your limits are every time.
I marvel at successful people who continue to stay driven. I'll be telling you right now, if I made $100 million in 1 year, I'm out. I'm out. And that's just being honest, because what happens is you can say, oh, I'm going to continue to do it. I love it. But your level of tolerance goes down, right? So you
Yeah,
come in and you go,
yeah.
this is the worst cup of coffee I ever had. I don't need this. I'm out of here.
I'm buying myself a coffee
Yeah,
shop, but
I'm done. I'm not going to play this game with you anymore. Do you see how much money I have? So I'm always fascinated by those people. I'm fascinated by, Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise has all the money in the world, yet he still wants to have a 22-year-old body and he wants to be able to run very fast in every movie, even though he has everything. And it takes a
because
singular
I mean,
dedication bordering on, as
yeah,
many people have said, his is bordering on the obsessive.
well, it's a drive that goes, that money doesn't satisfy in the end. I mean, and I think that you take your 100 million and you'd have a couple of nice years, and then you'd say, "What am I doing here?" And then you'd go do something else that was similar in a similar vein that got you that 100 million. I mean,
I think like
I did have a friend one time who said to me, or workmate who said, "Yeah, if I won the lottery and the lottery was huge, yeah, I'd come into work the next day just to pack my to pack my things and tell everybody what I thought of them, and then you'd never see me
Well,
again."
I would
So
change my focus. I've talked about this before. If you come into a lot of money like that, if you won the $1 billion lottery, my job, and actually become my children's job. Your job is to give this money away, because if you try to keep it, it's going to kill you. and it's going to drive
Yeah.
you to depression. But we're going to set it up where your job, and we'll pay you, but your job would be to give it away because scientifically, we figured out now if you want to feel better, volunteer. If you want to feel better, help someone else. And that's where joy lives. And that's not philosophy, that's medical science. Find something to be grateful
Well,
for.
it's that and creating,
Yeah.
the creative arts for sure. And enjoying those creative arts.
I, I,
So,
I'm just fascinated as you are with the artist. And you have a wonderful insight into it. It's why I always love talking to you because you are an artist. You understand the concept. You are one of those people who can pick a pen up and draw something. You can express what you see in your head. And that's got to be so enlightening and I would think exciting for you as an artist also. When you look at a Van Gogh or you look at a Monet or even you look at something more mundane as Star Trek and you can go, I can see the picture we can create with this.
well, I think I'm lucky that I've got a lot of great material to work with, and then to be able to tell a story using those materials for me is it's pretty straightforward process. But I do get excited when I think about how what people are going to experience when they turn the corner, or and then we're going to do this. I mean, of course, that's what makes this so satisfying is being able to create these experiences and push the limits on how those experiences um, are experienced, for lack of a better term, at the moment. But exhibits and experiences have been around for a long, long time. I was actually recently in Rome, walked right by the Colosseum. I mean, talk about if you build it, they will come. At the time, but even I mean, the line was, people want to go experience this greatness. They want to see this greatness. Um, and then what we've been able to do over the years is track how technology becomes accessible to us as producers and to the public in terms of their understanding. The budgets come down where we can start integrating this technology into our exhibits, which then turn these exhibits into experiences. And that's really uh, what we're working on now is how do we push it to the next level? And with Monet and with Van Gogh, these immersive experiences, we really have been able to push the storytelling of how art is experienced another step along the way. And that's really satisfying. But it's about having these access to these incredible artists and super talented people that gives me the ability to do what I do.
Here's my take. Everybody went to Italy last year, didn't they? We did. We went to Italy. I could think of 6 people that I know went to Italy. And now you said you were in Italy. Last year was the year that we all said, "We're leaving. Where are we gonna go? Italy? That's where we're gonna go."
Yeah.
Right there.
Well, you can't go wrong with Italy. You can't get a bad meal. Everything's incredible. It's beautiful there. But this year it's Egypt, though. Everybody's going to Egypt now.
Wow.
And we've got an incredible King Tut experience that I could tell you about
Yeah, I love
on
King
another
Tut.
time.
I do. I love the
Yeah.
story. I mean, everything that had to happen for us to even find his tomb, right? Because this was a minor king who died early, who they didn't have a chance to build a big tomb, so they had to use somebody
Well,
else's tomb, right?
and that's really the only reason that his tomb was discovered intact. He was jammed kind of into almost like a janitor's closet underneath Ramsey's tomb, and it took forever to find it. And Howard Carter actually he was down to his last day pretty much, where his benefactor said, I got to pull the plug. I'm out of money. You're done. You've spent enough. You spent 7 years doing this. This isn't going to happen." And literally the next day, he was like, "Just give me one more day." That's when he found it. So it's an amazing story. But then what we do in that experience is we show you the burial chambers of what they actually looked like. And they weren't much bigger than your studio.
Wow.
Three of
Mhm.
them, and then we unpack So that's a couple thousand square feet. Then over the next 20,000 square feet, we unpack uh, the 3,000 objects plus that were in his tomb and show you all the intricate details of all the paintings using works that are reproduced by Egyptian craftspeople from studios in Cairo who study this stuff all the time. And the top artifacts are never going to leave Egypt again. So if you get to Washington, D.C., check out Tutankhamun, his tomb and
I
treasures
see
as well.
things, wonderful
Yeah.
things.
Wonderful
And
things.
and was I mean, did he die of a broken leg? Was that is that what they thought? I mean, I know that's one of the theories they've had, that he had health problems because his parents were brothers and sister, I believe.
Yeah, that was the big. So that was the big thing. We've got a great Egyptologist we work with, and she'd be. I mean, if you want to talk about Egypt, we should get her on your show, Dr. Melinda Hartwig. She's super
Hook
passionate
me up,
about. I mean,
John. Hook me
talking
up.
to her, well. Let's see if let's have Amy set that up. But so she said, yeah, that's part of the theory, and then a lot of it is just genetics based on the intermarrying of bloodlines for so long that he was just so frail from the time he was born that was been really the major contributing factor.
Do you think there are any tombs left that we haven't discovered? Do you think? I mean, this is just me calling on you to just guess.
I hope so. I hope so.
I I think there can be. I think there could be. We're continuing to find stuff. I mean, we're finding cities that we didn't know existed. So it seems
Yeah.
like it'd be pretty easy to miss a tomb. But the
Yeah, we
Tomb
just
Raiders were
found a
so
city
good
in
at it.
we just found a city in the Amazon.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't
Yeah.
that ground penetrating radar, the LiDAR thing, just the craziest thing in the world?
Amazing. And then unfortunately, the pyramid in Indonesia apparently is not 27,000 years old.
We were hoping.
But we,
that
that would have, that's alien civilization stuff right
yeah,
there. Or really advanced. I mean, but that's what the fascination with ancient Egypt, the love of art, it's that spark that's inside of us. What's our real story? Where do we come from? Um, that's what makes all of this work so exciting. And that's what makes us want to go to these experiences, whether, an art experience or something like another experience we do called Bubble Planet, which is obviously completely different from Claude Monet, the immersive experience. It's uh, 11 rooms based around the theme of the bubble. And it's really, um, it's very esoteric and everything's soft and round. It's very playful, lots of bubblegum pink colors, very Instagrammable, but it's infinity rooms, incredible VR experience, of course, a giant bubble bath ball pit that you go in, um, underwater exploration. And I think what happens in those experiences is the same kind of thing where you have that time to reflect on your place in things, to kind of step outside of time and outside of your everyday. And we're looking for that transcendent experience. We're either looking to connect with the past, to know that, to validate that spark within us, or to nurture that spark within us through these transcendent experiences, that other immersive experiences.
Yeah, when you think about it, how many things had to happen to get you and me here, right? And all of these things that happened, everything that occurred, our relatives were alive during the time of Egypt. Our relatives were alive when King Tut died. They were alive when the Inca and Maya civilizations were along. They were people who were. That's where I'm fascinated about. I wonder what my great 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 grandfather would think of me. He'll hit me like, you sit in a room and talk to
Yeah.
people who aren't there. Is that what you do? Yes, sir.
That's witchcraft. That's
He would throw
witchcraft.
me in the pool, and if I sank, I wasn't possessed. But if I floated, pull me out and kill me.
Exactly.
I this is why I keep having you back, because we start talking about what we're doing, and then all of a sudden everything else starts coming into play. Like, oh, now I've got to talk about Egypt, and I'm still yet to talk about Star Trek, and I'm still yet to talk about how do you sit back and go, hey, we're going to flay these bodies, and then we're going to put resin on them, and you can see what the inside.
Well, I'm impressed that you remembered the polymer and everything. I mean, that's obviously we did our job with that one for you to recall
Would
that
you just sit
so
back and
well.
look at it and you're going, wow, we all don't want to think about. I mean, is it a nightmare thinking about having yourself cut open where you can actually see inside yourself? I mean, that's the thing that they build horror movies out of, right? And you go, oh
Yeah,
my
but
gosh.
the thing is, again, I mean, again, we all have a body, right? So we all want to know what's going on in there, and that was really fascinating with the bodies exhibit. You know, the one of the exhibits that people really loved in that exhibit was the I can't remember what we had a name for him, but essentially the medical marvel specimen. And so he had a cranial plate. He had a stabilizer for his wrist. He had a knee implant. He had a hip implant, and everybody, over a certain age is like, "Oh yeah, I got one of those. Oh yeah, that's what happened there." I mean, you want to see what's going on inside of you, but in the same way, it's the same longing that we've got with all of this desire to connect with these experiences is we want to connect with our community, but we want to more importantly, we want to connect with ourselves. And you can do that through art with Monet. You can do that at Bubble Planet. In Denver, you can connect with ancient Egypt in Washington, D.C. And so that's a common thread. Absolutely. I mean, maybe I'm simplifying it too much, but it's not really simplifying it because that's the drive in all of us all the time. I mean, the part of the great phantom of life, as Melville called it.
You sit back thinking about how you're trying to simplify it, and I'm like thinking, man, he's throwing some complex thoughts down right now. That was my take on it, and I love the idea that
No,
the Egyptian thing would be in Washington, which many of our monuments are Egyptian based, and I love the idea of water lilies in New Orleans because you can walk outside and see actual water lilies, and the French
yeah,
culture
floating
is
around.
represented best in New Orleans. More than any other place in the United States, and having Monet in New Orleans is a perfect fit. And Bubbles in
It's a
the fact that it's legalized marijuana, Bubbles in Denver makes complete sense also for some
oh,
reason.
you just, I mean, prepare however you would like to before you go, but I guarantee you a great time, no matter what state you show up
And
in.
there'll be plenty of munchies outside of Denver. I'm just saying. There'll be chips and dips and all that kind of stuff. John, you're the best. Let's do this again. As always, I just always
Absolutely, Gary.
enjoy hanging out with you and
Yeah, what
and learning a little bit. Every time I'm with you, I walk away feeling smarter. And I don't
this
usually
is
don't
real.
hang
This
out
is
with that
really
good of
fun.
people.
I mean, it's we it's like having a cup of coffee with a young friend. So
Bless your sweetheart. John Zaller. It's the immersive experience, Monet and everything else. All the links, all the details are in the show notes. Check them out.